so much for joining us tonight. I can't wait for you to discover what a privilege it is to hear our amazing writers. Our first student reading night took place a couple years ago, right before the pandemic hit, and so social gatherings like this were pretty impossible after that, so it was canceled for the next few years. But happily, we were able to organize and execute our second ever student reading night last November. It was planned and emceed by the English department's very own Evelyn Truong, who will be here shortly to join us as a reader. She did a fabulous job, and she's going to do a fabulous job tonight. I am happy to present our third ever student reading night. I hope you've all enjoyed your snacks. Feel free to grab more. We have no use for seconds. And on to what you're really here for. Our first reader is Logan Staggs. Logan is a senior creative writing major specializing in fiction, and he also has a minor in film production. He's from Collinsville, Illinois, and his favorite author is George Saunders. In his free time, Logan likes hanging out with his cat, playing Dungeons and Dragons, and helping friends with their creative endeavors. Let's give a hand.
Hi everybody. How are we all doing tonight? A little bit about this story. I'm going to be reading a story tonight that I wrote for a class, Myth and Modern, from Meg Gregory. Some of you know her. This story was inspired by me sort of having this weird fascination with certain jobs. I was fascinated and really bothered by roadkill, so I was like, oh, what is that job like for a roadkill collector? So a little bit of content warning, there will be dealing with roadkill in this story. But yeah, I think that's all. I just really like this story. It was in the Fuse, and it's called Birthday. So without further ado. I think the Jeep that almost just hit me was fucking Michael's. Black rubber blurred over a squashed possum splayed on I-40, summoned a spume of bloody innards, caught my nose, lips, eyelid. The mud-splattered Cherokee soared from a nearby on-ramp that was blocked by a line of trees. Thing went aerial, arched toward me across 2 lanes, a silhouette eclipsing the moon from where I crouched, smacked the nearby gravel, and spewed the carcass all over me, splashed possum in my damn face. Dropping the shovel and bucket, I crumbled back, screamed in shock, whiffed the stench, tasted guts, and wrenched. I saw in the dark, gloomy night, the car was shit brown and the license read, Taxman. Last time I saw that wagon was at Daddy's burial. Through the haze of mist and fog, Big Brother Michael pulled up with a fresh black suit. His wife wore a dress like a shadow. They spoke to no one, stayed the shortest of all, and revved away after Michael dropped a fistful of dirt into the grave. Their fancy clothes were damp and gray. That was a year ago. Once again, Michael left me a bigger mess than I had. The yellow vest peeled off. With trembling hands, I wiped away sweat, tears, and some chunk of blood. Produced lighter and Camel from a jacket pocket, kissed the cigarette under sympathetic stars, breathed cool air in with each warm drag, and stripped down to the off-white long johns and torn t-shirt, standing on one leg, then the other, cigarette crackling with each weighty breath, careless ashes singeing the gore-speckled garments as I threw them to the bed of the S10 among cage traps, shovels, scrapers, and lid-fastened buckets, with small dark shapes unmoving inside. The landfill off Hugo Way hid a lovely valley among its yellow hills where roadkill could be dumped, far from traffic so the carry-on birds caused no trouble. 2 possums, 2 raccoons, and a cat, and 20 a pop would net $100 for the night. Keep this up and the week could net $700, but it rarely ever did. I snapped photos on the handheld for proof of job completion and sent them to Brian, Daddy's old friend who keeps me on his payroll, before respectfully dumping the dead. If this hand-me-down Chevy were any less shit, I could zip around no stress. Instead, I'm maxed at 45 miles an hour and stuck around 15 miles a night. Miles and mishaps rack up quick on a classic like Daddy's S10, and funds are too tight for comfort these days. So, I've got to take it easy on the truck. But Brian's got me running in small circles anyway, up and down this stretch of I-40 and through a fraction of the winding hilly back roads of Omaha, Nebraska, far away across town from Henry Dorley Zoo and Aquarium. I'm confined to these streets. I have been my whole life. Brooding on Michael's 15-year absence and wondering what was his rush and worrying at every shuddering clunk the rusty white truck made along the road, I drove home. Home was a duplex with an abandoned left apartment because a heavy, dead, gnarled oak had rotted and buckled and caved the place in over a decade ago. The family there was luckily physically unharmed, and they remained in the rubble until the first rain came, whereupon they trudged just outside Omaha to the fading strip mall with the food land and the empty hotel furniture outlet. They pioneered the beggar colony that lives there now. Foodland went bankrupt from the sheer volume of unhoused folk roaming around and about and chittering, "Can I bum a canned good?" Or, "I'll shuck that ear of corn for you if you'll split it with me," as patrons tried to leave. You would think some law might bring the landlord out to fix the place, but I've never met the guy. Mom and Daddy were not proactive. They were content to ignore substandard living conditions so long as the roof was intact. Daddy often reminded us that it could always be worse. Lately, I haven't been so sure. At home, slumped as usual in the fraying recliner, lit by flickering grayscale reruns of The Price is Right, Mom was not. Following the routine, I turned the dim night lamp on and the television set off. I tucked her in with her threadbare quilt, barely blue and green anymore, and set out a glass of water. She was stirred by my shuffling. Her pallid, shriveled hand grasped my wrist with feeble strength. "Mikey," she said. "Thank you, Mikey. Don't forget to feed Buster before bed." We buried Buster 4 years ago. I am not Mikey. "Okay, Mom," I told her. "You rest now. You rest." Her hand was cold and trembling. She looked through me with a desperate, sunken, wizened, guilty, gray look, and I felt like she was waiting on me. I couldn't say for what. Her chest rose and fell with static-sounding wheezes, like a wet fire crackling and popping. She was usually more present. The routine was paralyzing and terrifyingly dead-ending. Make money, pay bills, make money, get groceries, make money, fix Mom. Why was I the one left alone? How was I supposed to live when I had to live for others? These animals and this sick old woman. I relied and waited on animals to die to fund the slow dying of someone else. When my head hit the yellow, sleeveless pillow, I cried for the animals that died and died. I cried for the dying mother in the other room, fading in every way. Finally, I cried for me. In a hot fit, I threw the blanket off and laid like a star on the sheets. No sleep that night. Next day was my 30th birthday. No time for tears in the morning, up with the sun and out by 8. When you have nothing else, cling ardently to routine. Once Mom's mint tea, fruit cup, cream cheese bagel, and new water had been set out, she didn't touch her old cup. I opened the blinds and stuck a note by her breakfast that read it back by noon. I softly woke her, got her morning meds down, and walked her to the restroom. When I sat her down and punched the power for TV, she turned to me with the same look she wore last night. Almost all her color was gone. Something in her clicked when she breathed. I cleared my throat like I wished she would, but all she did was stare unblinking. I squeezed her shoulder, kissed her brow, pointed to the note, and told her I'd be back soon. When it came to worrying about her, I was almost at my limit. Work boots, plus the cracked and crumbling sidewalks, made my ankles sore. I thought about Henry Dorley Zoo, and how it was about time to send another resume in. Maybe this one would ping their systems if I had 12 years of roadkill cleanup experience rather than 11. Then I wouldn't have to drive for work. I could just drive to work. Maybe then I could start saving for real instead of torching my earnings every month when my power steering pump craps out or when I need to get Mom's medication. One bill that was very selfish, considering everything, but very important to me, was the fee for online courses. I desperately needed an education. Judging from the quality of life disparity between Michael and me, a degree was quite possibly the only way off this dead-end track. I sacrificed several hours a day at the library, away from Mom, and several $1,000s a year just to learn about business math and introductory literature, hoping that I might one day be smart enough, experienced enough, worthy enough to work at Henry Dorley. I'm not sure how Michael got so successful so quick. We had the same education, same parents, same household, but he has a Jeep Cherokee and a lofty job at the bank and a wife, and I'm all alone. The library was usually a serene escape from the domineering confines of my dull, routine life, but I spent all that morning, as I converted fractions to decimals and back again, thinking about money, work, and Mom. Mom would need a doctor's visit soon. Last time, Dr. Foley, gray stubble, unevenly balding, narrow brown eyes too close together, gave me a bottle of little black pills and told me that if she ever needed a boost, ever seemed too old or too far away, to give her 2 of those. I might need it to put it in her drink or food, he said. That was the plan for tonight. New bill came today for the second 8 weeks of spring. Touchstone Online Academy charged $550 per 8-week course. 2 classes per term, 2 terms a semester, $1,100 every 2 months, $2,200 every 4, 3 more semesters, $6,600, $7,700 counting today's statement, associate degree. Thank you, businessman. The plan was feasible, conceivably statistically probable. Thank you, intro lit. Just then, the BlackBerry in the right pocket buzzed. Brian. This was unusual. Hello? Hey, champ, it's me, Brian. How are you? Got a sec? I'm fine, Brian. How are... Good. Listen. I've got a new guy training right now. He's going to run your roads tonight to get a sense of the routes, so you can take the night off. Sound good? A pause. I said, oh, well, good, Brian said. Take it easy, buddy. And tell Darla I said, hey. Click. A gray gloom had swallowed the sky. Raindrops started pelting the windows. It was already noon, and I was barely halfway done with the day's assignments. Had I really daydreamed so hard? I printed my conversion worksheet, a short story, and a copy of my old resume, $1.50. After the printer grumbled many squeaks, clunks, beeps, and clicks, I thanked it and walked home, hugging the papers to the inside of my chair. Sometimes I felt lost for thoughts or words, like when Brian told me to take the night off. I couldn't explain the situation simply to him. I wasn't sure he'd understand, so I panicked and froze. Or the other night when Michael blew up and walked out, He told our parents he hated who he was becoming, and that they would never change, but that he would. He would. I sat in what was our room, stunned, trying to thumb through a Muscle Machines magazine without getting tears on the pages. He packed some clothes before leaving and told me I should follow him. I'm still frozen where he left me, unchanged. I guess he could have changed. I guess he must have. Whatever happened when he left, it was drastic. He is not who he was. Maybe he bounced early enough to escape whatever harmful influence he was afraid of. Generational trauma? Was that it? My head ached trying to envision it. Other times I welled with emotions and opinions, like when I, drenched and shivering and stumbling home over the ruptured sidewalks and road rocks, tripped over something not quite sturdy but squishy, and looked down to see a gutted squirrel with innocent, fearful black eyes and a gaping crown. Tears immediately surfaced in my eyes. They scorched my cheeks. They wore fury and despair. Just how could someone care so little, driving fast enough on a residential road that you couldn't even slow or swerve? Or did you not slow? Were you the careless person we all overtly judge and hate? A person without the fuse wiring love to life? A person who could kill? My whole life, and I would never understand. I picked him up and laid him in a nearby yard. It was one of the nicer houses on the street, with a moss-blackened bird bath and one of those flamingos. There were dark green trees for shade. I plucked a handful of grass to scatter over his body. My tears nourished the soil, and they showered the squirrel. I grieved from deep. I grieved for the native non-humans whose habitats we've gashed and run roads through. Roads that cut through and through their world, slicing it into uneven, unfair portions. Some raccoons live with berry bushes and river brooks, while others get dumpster city. People call it equal opportunity. Usually it's people sitting safe in a stream, berries in hand. Dumpster raccoons have heart attacks. Forest raccoons may not, but both are wasted by traffic. Do all raccoons have a better brother and a dying mom? Sorry I'm late, I told her when I walked in. Let me get settled and we'll do lunch. She was laying limply, eyes shut, mouth open, napping. In the bedroom, I peeled the boots off, massaged my lower half, and grabbed the little black pills from the bedside drawer before heading to the kitchen. 10 minutes later, tea, sandwich, chips, dropped, forgotten. I kneeled in front of Mom. Her narrowed, glossy eyes were unfocused upwards, stuck to the nicotine-stained ceiling. It took me too long to notice. It occurred to me then that you never really own anything. My belongings don't exist. Not my clothes, phone, knickknacks, or rolling hunk of metal. Maybe my brother or my body. Maybe. But even then, he hasn't been my brother in 15 years, and we are simply renting the molecules and carbon constantly cycling through the universe that make up our hearts and minds. Thank you, Chem 101. All this time is borrowed too. I knew this looking at Mom. The land, sea, and air were here before us, here for people and animals that we'll never know existed, here for so many living things for so many years, and we are just a blink, one flicker of flame on this bottomless candle. What an awful relief. This was one of those moments where I felt lost. When no tears sprang, I was angry. When Alex Trebek kept giving prompts to contestants on the TV behind me, I was stunned stupid. In an unconscious motion, I was dialing FNBO, Michael's bank. Yeah, could I speak to Michael, please, your manager? Sure, it's important. Family. Oh, your family, they said. Didn't you hear? His daughter was just born. He's the happy father now. Isn't it wonderful? Thank you.
He also tells stories via performing in community theater and playing D&D with likely too much enthusiasm. He's a big fan of D.E. Schwab, Kelly Wink, and Flannery O'Connor, as well as his boyfriend and parents, to whom he is thankful for coming tonight. Brady Smith,
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for that wonderful intro. So I wrote this story last spring while I was studying abroad in London and took a class with Anthony Pliskova on dystopian literature. We read a whole bunch of dystopian novels. We read, and some sort of short stories as well. We read Ian Forster's The Machine Stops. We read Orwell's 1984, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. We had Octavia Butler's Kindred, a whole bunch of stuff. It was all amazing. And in that class, we were assigned to write either an essay or a short story based on one of 30 prompts. And the one that caught my eye was, behind all dystopias lies the idea of the organic community, a lost pastoral innocence. And I was like, whoa. And I thought it was super interesting. And the question that came to my mind was, what would a dystopia in a pastoral setting, in this like romanticized rural world, look like? And that's where this story came from. This is Perfect Pasture. Behind all dystopias lies the idea of the organic community, a lost pastoral innocence. The shepherd enjoyed preaching. My co-mates and brothers in exile, hath not the old custom made this life more sweet than that of painted pomp? Aye, all 7 dozen of them replied. And are not these woods more free from peril than the envious court? Like dogs, the assembled chanted agreement. Here feel we but the penalty of Adam. They were gathered in a clearing in the forest on the small island. They had perfect blue sky above them, which disappointed the shepherd. She preferred to hold sermon in the rain, to remind the assembled that cold and bitter wet brought good harvest. Momentary comfort brings future joys. The season's difference, as the icy fang and churling chiding of the winter's wind, which, when it bites and blows upon my body, even till I shrink with cold, I smile. All 7 dozen of them were nude, as Adam and Eve were in the perfect pasture. What a wonderful way to live that had been. Say, this is no flattery. These are counselors that feelingly persuade me what I am. Sweet are the uses of adversity. Sweet are the uses of adversity, the assembled echoed back in haunting fusion. Which, like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel on his head. The wreckage of the helicarrier smoldered on the other side of the island. The shepherd had decreed it a haunted place, full of the past. They all agreed never to look back, only toward the future and the hope of their rescue. And this our life, the shepherd was reading from her book, exempt from public haunt, finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything. The shepherd had hoarded books like these in secret. Shakespeare, Chaucer, Milton, Thoreau. She loved them all. No longer did she have to hide them. I would not change it, the shepherd closed her book. I would not change it, all 7 dozen of the assembled chanted back. They drank from the stream that was there and caked their arms in mud. The sermon was over. Theodore woke up this morning extremely anxious, as he did every morning nowadays. You're all right, you old fool, just get up and breathe, he said to himself. It took only 12 deep breaths for him to climb out of bed, a recycled helicarrier seat, and pull aside the emergency blanket he was using as a door. Mistress Yelena was boiling stew over the bonfire, egg and beetroot from the smell of it. Sweat swamped her forehead and armpits, and she had numerous burn marks on her forearms. She was covered in ash. The fire smelled like the helicarrier wreckage, whose presence, though he could not see it from the village, hung over him like a weight or a ghost. He took his breakfast from Mistress Yelena's pot, said a polite thank you, and slurped stew towards the shepherd's dwelling. The shepherd made Theodore the master of apprehensions after the wreck. His job was to ensure everyone was contributing their share of the work of the village, and he worried every morning that there would be someone not doing their share, and he would have to intervene. Theodore, who had been a co-pilot and quite used to being bossed around, was not a type for confrontation. The shepherd's dwelling was made of the same stuff as the others, recycled metal from the helicarrier, recycled seat as a bed, and bundles of sticks and rocks as shelves and sitting places. The shepherd had used the trunk of an impressive alocasia tree as one of her walls, which made her hovel slightly more prestigious. She greeted Theodore with a fatherly hug, her warm robes blessing his bare skin, but her voice in his ear was not so inviting. Her whisper sounded cold, like the wind before rain. You embody the ideals of this community well, Theodore. You want for one thing, and you are willing to sacrifice to get it. Thank you, shepherd. Anything to get us back home. Theodore was intimidated by the shepherd. He was scraping his own nails down to the root. But I think you and everyone sees the beauty in this life too, no? Sure, we miss the cities and obstacle golf and the feelies, but the island has taught us much, has it not? We have learned to work together for a common goal, feed off the land like humanity used to, bond with others in a way we never could back home. It feels like a return, no? Sweet are the uses of adversity, shepherd. Theodore was sweating a bit, and suddenly felt embarrassed as he was naked in front of her. Sweet are the uses of adversity indeed, Theodore. And on that note, the shepherd turned to face him, and Theodore straightened his posture. I will leave you, my master of apprehension, to have a very stern talk with Master Henry. Something has gone awry. So it was finally happening. Could they really have a dissenter? Such a devout man, Master Henry was early to every sermon, and he loved the shepherd's teachings. Surely Master Henry wanted to return to the cities as much as the rest of them did. The shepherd returned to her book. Off you go, and if he gives you trouble, I won't be far behind. I'll do what we have to. Master Henry was a fisherman for the village, so his dwelling was laden with crude sticks and synthetic plastic cotton pulled from clothes and recycled as fishing wire. His dwelling was made of the same metal and leaf and dirt as Theodore's. Master Henry's bed lay neatly in a corner, and he had raised the dirt from his hut to prevent flooding. Flooding was a part of life on the island, Theodore thought, a necessary suffering to endure. And odder still, there in the middle of the dwelling was Master Henry, not at the coast fishing, as he should be, but sitting at an art easel. There was a canvas on it, almost entirely laid in color. Splotchy paint rose and fell like minuscule mountains across the canvas. Theodore knew, just by looking at it, it would be bumpy and coarse to the touch, if a bit wet. And the colors, oh, what color! Sunset yellow and sunrise orange, midday cobalt mixed with ocean cerulean, the difference subtle but fascinating. And there was Master Henry, painting all of it with a palette knife. Why aren't you out on the coast yet, Master Henry? I am painting, Master Theodore. There was no use hiding it. He slathered another streak across the canvas. I caught more than enough fish yesterday for the last, and my arms are horrendously tired. To say such a thing was in direct contrast to the shepherd's teaching, the village values. Sweet are the uses of adversity, Master Henry, Theodore replied, and for all the nervousness he'd felt before, he felt a bit giddy to be exercising this power. But then he felt guilty for feeling that. For 66 days we've struggled and hurt for the sake of the village and for our one singular goal, to get back home alive. And besides, don't you see the appeal of this life? A return to nature, to working the land? It's like the shepherd says, good in everything. You ought to like this life. Master Henry was quiet for a second. And are you happy on this island, Master Theodore? I tell you, I am certainly happy to serve the cause of us getting home, but I cannot paint back home either. No one paints back home. Have you ever heard of a painter in the cities? If we are going to get back to our roots, I would like to do the sorts of things they did. It makes me happy. And at that moment, the shepherd sauntered into the dwelling. She must have been listening from outside. Theodore, deflated. If we all go about our days making ourselves happy, Master Henry, nothing will get done, she said. I'm so sorry to hear that you put your own comfort above everybody else's. We are a village, and the trial of our strandedness brings us together. Our suffering means our survival. I am saddened you have forgotten this. And at that moment, Master Henry jumped up and knocked his easel to the ground. The still wet paint splattered the canvas and his ankles. He was pointing the palette knife at the shepherd. Just who do you think you are, Julie? So you're the pilot, so you have the book, and so you started the sermons. That means you control everyone. We're suffering, and you're acting just like... The master of apprehension rocketed his fist into Master Henry's stomach. Theodore drank in the man's sudden silence, adrenaline, and something like regret, but red instead of blue. Theodore suddenly felt very warm and sweaty, like a humid day before it was going to rain. Good work, Master Theodore. I will take Master Henry from here. See to it that anyone who heard this encounter is placated. The shepherd, a muscular woman, dragged Master Henry from his dwelling towards her own. It was a terribly selfish thing Henry was making here, he told himself. Terribly selfish. Very selfish. But Theodore went to examine the fallen easel anyway. In the mess of color, Theodore thought he could make out a stream, or maybe a man and a woman dancing, or maybe a cliff and a waterfall. Beside the easel were two bowls. Henry had been crushing hyacinth and grasses into purple and green paint. It must have taken hours to collect enough flowers for paint that thick. And just as he'd said, there was enough fish for 2.5 days in Henry's full box. Master Theodore picked up the discarded palette knife from where Henry had dropped it, and he added a streak of red paint, like blood, across the canvas. Just for fun. This is our chance, Theodore, to fix everything. The helicarrier was burning. 7 dozen had survived the crash. They were assembling on the beach, guarding each other against the night with emergency blankets. Theodore and Julie were sitting in the clearing. They won't come for us. Julie sounded less frightened than Theodore thought she ought to. You know they won't. No suffering happens in the cities, so it's better to just forget us. Theodore was Julie's co-pilot for the city-owned helicarrier. They knew how the cities worked, how the cities thought. How will we tell them? Theodore looked below at a boy no more than 13, trembling beneath a blanket on the beach. We can't tell them. They won't understand, not like we do. Julie had salvaged her copy of As You Like It from the helicarrier. She was thumping it as she spoke. But if we take charge, Theodore, we can make this place better. Think about home. We don't want anything in the city, so we never do anything. We say nothing. We think nothing. But here, it could be different. We all want to return home, so we work for that want. We fish, and we cook, and we build for the hope of going home, and together we'll come to learn that this life is better. We're closer to nature, closer to each other, closer than we could ever be in the cities. But it's not real. It's a lie. It'll be real to them. Theodore had a strange sense of déjà vu, but Julie was so sincere, and being closer to her than they could ever be in the cities didn't sound so bad. Okay. Julie smiled, feeling as though, despite everything, she had gotten precisely what she wanted. I will be their shepherd, and they will be my flock, and this will be our perfect pasture.
Evelyn was born and raised in Saigon, Vietnam, and her birth name is Truong Huy Linh. She's currently a senior at Webster University, majoring in creative writing with a minor in film, television, and video production. Before being a Webster student, she had worked in Dubai for 5 years with Emirates Airline as a flight attendant, and completed her associate's degree at St. Louis Community College. In 2021, she was awarded Emerging Writer at St. Louis Community College at the Merrimack. Her poems were published both at St. Louis Community College and in the Webster Literary Journal. Apart from writing, she's also a filmmaker. Evelyn's favorite poet is Louise Gluck, and she adores Stephen Chow, as well as everything about Hong Kong martial arts cinema. Everyone give it up for Evelyn.
For inviting me so I can have the opportunity to share my poetry. And also I would like to thank my auntie, my boyfriend, and all of my friends who come here to celebrate this moment with me. And I wouldn't stand here today without the tremendous support from my English instructors, so I would like to give my special dedication to all of them, especially Professor Pamela Garvey, who significantly helped me to grow and nurture my love for poetry. And here we are. My reading will include 5 poems. The first 2 are about a journey of a kite and its observation. Through the kite's perspective, I will introduce you to the beauty of my country, Vietnam. And then I will take you to travel with me to Egypt, through a set of 3 narrative poems about an Egyptian boy named Ali. And audience, are you ready? So yeah, the first poem is A Kite Flight. Surfing through the clouds, I slide across the trumpet face of Mr. Sun, as quick as a honey rat flips around my kitchen. Recall every busy morning, smoked roll from fresh brewed banana wrapped in sticky rice. I roll and roll under momentum of the jolly wind, rising higher and higher. I mock my competitors without feeling the human's ripped tightening me. Rising too far, I boast with my head up. The championship surely mine. I look for a familiar face, but see no one. Only the air to whisper, and the pressing canvas of the sky. I, breathless, rise higher and higher, no longer limited by the red string, with zero gravity upon my teal diamond body blown by the frisky air motion into a swelling baby pump. The second poem, Hatchlings. Slop off into countless days and nights, I see a flock of whooping cranes in the green paddy fields, transient conical heads hurrying moving, bamboo shoulders posed full of golden barley. I slowly glide towards the water buffaloes, their ivory horns sliding round in pace. Their wind blows me some miles further. A bonny kid crying under the bamboo hedge. A pair of sparrows flicker across my sight. Then land on the tiny straw nets with 3 little eggs. The male feeds his mate while she's hatching their seeds. Thunder smashes the Cachiput wetland. Crystal droplets conceal the hungry plants. My wooden bones crack at the sound of pitter-patter song. My cracker disperses, blurry. In the nest, a newborn baby breaks the cells. A piece of my body flies over the tree, shadows above 3 French hatchlings. And this is a set of narrative poems about an Egyptian boy called Ali. The name is The Dove Prodigals. Part 1, A Dove's Craving. In a blissful morning, more than any other day, I got half a loaf of East Baladi with garlic and beans. My stomach squawked as usual and I kept asking, Grandma, is there any food left for Ali? She said nothing but fetched a weary sigh, leaving me struggle with my blood wine. I went to school with a rebellious tummy. No doubt left the books at home due to my oafish memory. Chasing feluccas on the azure mirror of the night, I streaked as a bullet through the sky, having no time to weigh the bathing kids or the fishermen held those clean daggers. Passed by the sunken windowsill, I saw Grandpa and Grandma were sharing a piece of each galadi with no bean. I witnessed their breakfast and their hollow eyes with twinkle cheeks I've never seen. Hot grief trembled my face. My lips twitched in suppression to avoid smacking any sound. Part 2, A Dove's Fancy. That night, I dreamt of bringing them to dine in the old Cataract Hotel. All servants bowed to us from the main hall to the restaurant door, as if Howard Carter were checking in. A huge feast with golden cutleries and sheeny glaze on a large velvet table. All kinds of welcome drinks from delicately poured champagne to shabby chai were all offered. I stuffed the food like a roasted pigeon in Hamamashi dish and felt that my stomach would crack, but didn't stop. I licked the last syrup drops of baklava on the tip of my tongue. I crush every crunchy part of tomato, brown balls, and enjoy the mashed fava beans and parsley melting in my mouth. Butter and creamy cheese in combination with the angel hair of Anatha woke me like blossoms awake after the winter storm. Gnawing, I keep gnawing. Then I asked, "How's the food, Grandpa? Grandma?" They smiled at me as the pristine rain trickled on the every brow, still elegantly held the fork and knife to slice several puffy layers of the Ali baked dough. The sun without the sky is just a lonely firewall, a pharaoh without a god, wearing no crown, and they are my only god and goddess. And the last poem is set when Ali becomes a man now, and the title is Ali on the Train to Cairo. Nothing flickered or glowed inside my mind, as 2 days ago my blood dropped. Now the train darkened, clinking whistle. I closed my eyes to escape the pictures of Grandma's crinkled cheeks, forced smile, of Grandpa's hollow eyes, glimmered in pride, of Abdul and Mahmoud bragging about how they tasted a female's lips. I laughed once they urged me to try. Tom flipped thy Qatar bread quickly reflected into bitter crunches once overbaked. Soon they would forget their silly kiss. More wind chill waggled the palm trees. I rolled the all-wool scarf Grandma knit around me, feel as if her saturated hands still held me tight. And that's about it.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing those wonderful songs with us. And for our finale, we have Indigo Thompson. Indigo is a senior creative writing major specializing in fiction, but will write just about anything. She's from St. Louis and has no favorite author because we're all stealing from each other anyway. In her free time, she enjoys reading and starting a bunch of clubs, which she may or may not ask you to join after this. So run quickly or talk about the reading instead. Give a hand for Indigo.
Hi, everybody. I'm supposed to give an intro, and I just can't top Evelyn. Like, that was beautiful. I don't know how to do that. But, today I'm going to be reading a small piece of something that may or may not become a longer piece, because obviously as a writer, the moment you hate it is the moment no one will ever see it again. And I would provide further context, but I feel like the story we should go into it with no expectations. So I'm going to start, and the story is called Ruth. Andrew never had to think about who he was until now. He didn't want to marry Luann, and he didn't want her to give birth to his kids either. The two may not seem important, but he was only getting older, and they were topics he'd begun to worry about recently. In his mind, she just wasn't the type of woman any man would want to do those things with. He'd have to give up his dreams to settle, and no one wants to settle. But now, sitting at the edge of the bed watching her pace, which was something she did always when she was tense, he had to ask the impossible question: who am I? A few months ago, hell, even a few minutes ago, he was so certain about this answer. Then Luann suddenly stopped pacing and began to cry. Luann was normal. That was Andrew's first thought when he noticed her at the bus stop a few years ago. He didn't know her as Luann yet. She was just a girl who had on a pair of busted sneakers, which weren't white, thank God, because Andrew hated old white sneakers. They were black, and somehow having a torn up pair of black shoes was interesting. Her outfit was tan, denim overalls and a flower printed top underneath. Andrew wished he could make sense of why a stranger could be so plain, yet so enticing. On the opposite side of the street, where he sat, waiting for a different bus, the urge to do something stupid tapped him on the shoulder. But see, there wasn't a little devil prompting Andrew to do stupid things. Tapping was just the best way he could describe doing something he felt acted against his best interest. It was a warning sign. He ignored it from time to time, like that particular day when he decided to cross the street to introduce himself to a girl waiting for the bus. He was nervous at first, concerned with how he was dressed in his blue janitorial garb, so he didn't say anything for a while. The girl hadn't noticed him anyway. For all the silence between them, the street was the opposite. The cars rumbling past, the laughter of children on the playground behind them, and the crunch of someone walking on the gravelly part of the pavement further down the road. It annoyed Andrew to be embarrassed and ultimately ignored, so he mustered some courage to finally say something. I'm Andrew. It was the best he could do. Slightly glanced up at him. She seemed pained by the action of having to lift her entire head at the expense of making conversation. At least that was Andrew's thought, since she didn't say anything back. Anyone else would have let the conversation die, if you could really call it that. Yet he felt the tap, tap, tap on his left shoulder. He sighed, scoots a little bit closer to her, and she does the same, just away from him. It's not polite to just ignore someone, right? She replied, but didn't continue. At this point, Andrew didn't feel the tapping on his shoulder anymore. He guessed that whatever sentiment he had toward her had faded. So he watched as the bus passed on the other side of the street, thinking about his mother. It was chilling to think about her. They hadn't spoken since he decided to move out because he wasn't able to handle her stuffiness, her expectations for his life. He would never be good enough for her until he got his GED or became a lawyer, which were two very different extremes. She stressed this though because she hadn't finished high school so she could take care of him. He never had the heart to explain his feelings to her properly, how he hadn't asked her to do that, how he hadn't wanted to be born. The girl cleared her throat, suddenly turning toward Andrew with a perfect posture, her neck erect, a neck he noticed was longer than most. He thought that maybe why she had refused to lift her head up before. The neck was an insecurity. I'm Luann, she says, reaching out her hand. Andrew shakes it and quickly lets go, laying his hand along his thigh. He hoped the gesture wasn't offensive. Mind telling me what stop gets me closest to Francis' funeral home? Why me? You're getting on this bus too. Yeah, but why the brakes on the bus cut off Andrew's butt? The girl was right. After making the effort to go across the street and speak to her, already embarrassed, Andrew had no choice really but to get on the wrong bus. He didn't speak, just nodded his head in agreement. The girl did the same when they got off. Sometimes it was hard for Andrew to admit that a small part of him wanted to never get off that bus with Luann. Andrew was conflicted about how to approach the topic of breaking off things with Luann. It was an idea he'd been toying with for months now, but didn't have the heart to do it. Walking through the door earlier, he suddenly thought, there's no time like the present, blatantly ignoring the tap on his shoulder. Now, he hadn't expected her to cry. She'd never done it before, from what he knew. She certainly hadn't at the funeral. This was one of those times Andrew wished he had as much gumption as Luann seemed to have towards everything in life. It's one of the things he loves about her. Listening to her choke on her own spit in anguish was like a pair of hands forcing him to stay on the edge of the mattress, hands folded in his lap, with his big toe thumping softly against the polished hardwood. When had Luann taken the time to polish the floors? It was another thing he added to the list of things that would now be responsibilities once she was gone. The whole situation was strange. He feels like a bad person for not consoling her right now, but what about him? Who would console him? Andrew slouched further into the rounded corner, the box spring squeaking, contemplating that damn question again. Who am I? Well, maybe the better question was who he was without Luann. He just needs to think harder. The explanation might give him, who told you about Paul? Was it my mom or someone else? Andrew's side, how was he supposed to think about his soon-to-be new situation of singleness if he had to confront his own lie, his own excuse? Luann knew she wasn't a cheater, he knew she wasn't a cheater, but saying that she was doing that exact thing with Paul was the best he could do. Paul had always been a sore spot for him, so why not? Looking up at her, looking down at him, he had no way to explain that. You look beautiful when you cry. I've never seen you cry before. Deflecting. He was deflecting even though what he said was partially true. Luann turns away and starts to pace again. It's obvious to Andrew she's smacking